And good morning. Welcome to Monday Musings. I am Ramsey Bergeron. Today is August 7th. Thank you for being here. Let me know in the chat where you are watching from. I appreciate you being here. And today I want to talk about a concept that is going to come up. It's come up a lot actually in the emotional mastery class that I'm teaching. And it's on taking the bait. So what do I mean by taking the bait? Just have you ever been in a situation where you're talking with someone either at work or at home or online, and someone says something that provokes a reaction in you, and you react in an emotional way that generally might not be in line with how you would act if you weren't, if you had time to consider what was going on. And that's called taking the bait. It comes from the fishing term. If someone throws the hook in the water and then the fish comes up, sees something juicy, and it bites. And that's what tends to happen in this situation is somebody does something that instigates a situation and you react to it. And when that happens, we tend to give them control over us. And we don't realize it, but we're being manipulated in that moment. And whether it's intentional or unintentional, it's usually subconscious on the person that's baiting you. But either way, you take it. So we're going to talk today about kind of that dynamic of what happens in that situation with the person that's baiting you, and then what goes on and how do we respond in ways that we can view it differently to not take the bait, to be able to find more peace in our life. And I know for me, this is something that I used to do a lot, be it in the dynamics of a relationship or work, where I'm having a conversation and then someone would say something that would either be off topic or an attack against me. And I would want to defend myself because clearly what they're saying is in my mind untrue. And so I'm trying to use facts and reason to get them to see my point of view. But in the process, I've lost the fact that I'm doing it from an emotional place. And it's not even really about what they're saying. And we'll talk about why that is. Like why do we react the way we do? And for me, man, it's such a loss of control whenever you have that, you take the bait. And then later you think about it and you either realize you took the bait or that it was a completely either a diversion, a deflection, or you don't know, why you did it. So let's talk about why do people do that? Why do people bait you in different situations? And let's, I was with a friend of mine over the weekend that was talking about their ex, and they've got joint custody, and their ex had said something about the child had ran to one parent to say what they thought the other parent did, and that the parent took the bait, that the dad came back and said, "Well, I heard you did this," when it might not have been the case. But we get so triggered by that, and there's different reasons why people do that. One, maybe that doesn't necessarily apply to this situation. Well, sometimes it can be wanting to be the hero. Like if a parent does that with their child to the other parent, it can be just trying to be the hero and trying to get that child on their side. And even though they know that the other parent either wasn't necessarily in the wrong, they can try to provoke you and trigger you there. In other dynamics, it happens a lot because of control, where someone wants to manipulate you because it gives them control of the situation. And sometimes it can be because they're out of control in their own life. So by controlling you, it makes them feel better about it. It can also be a diversion or evasion tactic. And I know there was a relationship I was in not too long ago. And sometimes you'll see this in situations where you're dealing, it's not always necessarily with, narcissistic or borderline tendencies, but generally when people don't want to accept accountability for their actions, they will do something to provoke you. They'll do something to get you to react or respond, because then it's no longer about what they did. It's about your reaction. And that's taking the bait. So being aware, that's yet another, that's a reason why people will do this. And sometimes it's subconscious. They're not intentionally or consciously doing it, but they're doing it to deflect off of whatever they may have done. And so now it's on you. Sometimes it's emotional gratification. Someone will try to bait you because once they see that you react or respond, they have a feeling of control over you. And it's either satisfaction. Sometimes it's amusement. Sometimes they're bored. Sometimes they just like chaos. And when you're dealing with somebody who likes chaos, and you approach them from a calm state, that's boring. Yeah, whenever I was growing up, my childhood was very chaotic. So I spent a lot of my life in situations where I enjoyed chaos. And it took a while for me to recognize that that wasn't a healthy dynamic, and work hard to realize that calm isn't boring. Calm is actually peaceful. But whenever somebody's baiting you, they may not have that same perspective. So that could be another reason why they do it. And so they may enjoy conflict instigation. Again, just causing chaos and drama. Testing boundaries. Sometimes people will bait you just to test your boundaries, just to see what they can get away with. Sometimes it's attention seeking. They may feel like you're not giving them enough attention, so they'll bait you just to see if they can get a response out of you. Well, whatever the situation is, whenever you've been in the situation, and how do you not take the bait? Because it can be really tempting to jump on that and I say attack, but defend yourself. And it happens a lot when we're on autopilot. Because someone does something to bait us, we don't even think. I say, wait a minute, and we want to immediately either correct them, defend ourselves, let them know that they're wrong, because we feel like we're attacked in the situation when we're being baited. So usually we're being baited about something that's important to us. Like, they're usually aware of our beliefs, whether it's, politics is a very prominent place where people do get baited. Politics, your upbringing, religion, childcare, your values, and the things that you hold important to you are easy targets for people to try to elicit a reaction from you. And when they do that, you've taken the bait. So how do you break this cycle? And why is it even important to break the cycle? And if you've had somebody bait you in a situation, put it in the chat. Let me know. Let me know how has this shown up for you in your life? And when have you taken the bait? And give me some examples of maybe when you didn't, how you felt about it. So some clues for you to recognize if you've taken the bait in a situation. And this is something that in my Living with Purpose class, I've got a couple of people in there who also took my emotional mastery class. And man, some of the stories they share about how they've recognized it and they've shifted it. The first clue that you might be being baited is your emotional intensity. Were you calm a second ago, and then someone said something, and you've gone from like a 3 to a 9 in how you feel just emotionally in a situation? That can happen usually when someone does something, and if someone's, if they've designed something they've said to provoke a response from you, then that's what your emotional intensity is going to do. So be aware of that. Unexpected provocations. Say you're driving down the street and you're next to someone you're dating or someone else in the car who just says something for no reason, or you're at a family gathering and someone comes up and decides that they want to say something about the clothes you decided to let your child wear to that thing, just out of nowhere, just to get a reaction. That's baiting. Personal attack. If it's something about you, something personal, that's out of context for the situation. Be aware if this is a pattern. So if every time you address a legitimate concern you have, if they either get defensive or resort to an attack and you feel like, I can't talk to this person without it escalating, that could be a sign of someone trying to bait you. Exaggerated claims, and this is one that I've really tried very hard not to do, is use words like always or never. Like anytime you use those words, it's generally not true. Say, well, you never listen to me, or you always do this. Is that accurate? It's like, well, I notice you do this a lot. And if someone always uses these exaggerated words, it's probably them being dramatic in that situation. Absence of constructive engagement, where if it's always just provoking your emotions without ever any real attempt to resolve it, any real attempt to have meaningful dialogue to work through the issue, then you might be being baited. Intentional timing, like if this person knows that you've had a long day and you come home at the end of the day, you just want to relax. It's been a long day at work. And they say something just where you're already at your wit's end and they know it. And I'm using the context of relationships to describe a lot of these, but it can also happen at work. It can be with a coworker. It can be with a boss. It can be with a neighbor. It can be at, someone that you see just at anywhere. Be in line at the grocery store and someone can try to bait you because they've had a bad day. And by making you feel like you're having a bad day, they feel better because they've now elicited a reaction from you. So how do you break this? Like, it's one thing to be aware of it. So if you're aware of any of these reactions in these situations, how do you develop the tools to not take the bait? So I've always said this, it starts with awareness, self-awareness. I'm teaching my emotional mastery class again next week. And a really important statistic is like 90 to 95% of people think they're self-aware. If you're watching this right now, odds are you think, I'm pretty self-aware. And Harvard Business School actually did a study. And do you know how many people are actually self-aware? 10%. 10% of people are actually self-aware. So how do you develop awareness of how self-aware you are? Well, that's one of the things that I teach in my class. Next week, I'm doing a free emotional mastery class that might be able to help you out. But being aware of what is my reaction, what is my part in this situation, especially when you're dealing with people who bait you into either disagreements or confrontations. Mindfulness. And yes, I talk a lot about mindfulness, and it's because it works. Like, being present in the moment allows you to realize and recognize, how do I want to respond to this situation? I was in a relationship where and it was so freeing. It was actually, not too long ago where I've dated someone for a short amount of time, but recognizing that they were pretty unhappy with themselves. And so they would just say something just to instigate. And at first I was taking the bait. I would pounce at every opportunity. And it was such a powerful thing because by teaching people, it forces me to learn to practice what I preach. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I genuinely believe in the tools that I teach, and it gives me a moment to reflect and say, all right, well, let me use them. And as soon as I stopped detaching from them in regards to their reactions, I didn't have to react, and I could just be at peace. You don't have to take, if someone comes at you with negativity or attacking, or you feel attacked, you don't have to take the bait. You can just understand that it's all about them. Anything someone says to you or tries to provoke has nothing to do with you. Now, if someone's coming to you from a constructive place, says, hey, let's have a discussion about this. This is something that's not baiting you. That's having a conversation. So understanding that every critique or conversation isn't necessarily baiting you. Is it done to elicit a strong emotional reaction out of you? For one of the reasons I listed earlier, either trying to control you or just deflect from something or to just make them feel good or because they like chaos. So other ways you can help protect yourself from being baited are boundaries. If there's someone in your life that baits a lot, you don't have to be around that person. Or if it's a situation where you find that you do have to be around them, whether they're a family member or coworker, you can use what's called the boundary model, which is when you and then I feel. So when you say things like that to me, I feel like you don't care about my feelings and you're trying to elicit a reaction. If you continue to talk to me in that way, I'm not going to spend time around you. So you're not telling somebody, don't do this, because that never is very effective. But when you say, when you do this, this is how I feel, then you're letting them know that this is how you feel about their behavior. And if they continue to engage in that behavior, you're not going to be around them. So that's actually just setting a boundary with that. Acceptance. So if you notice that you've reacted, accept it. Okay, what can I learn? What can I do next time? In my Living with Purpose class, there's a gentleman in there who's talking about, he took his children to a pool at a private club, and the children were acting up. And his first reaction was just to go yell at them, like, stop acting up, you're going to embarrass me here. And he didn't. He's taken the class and he realized, okay, wait a minute, how do I want to respond? And then he chose to say, kids, come here, let's talk for a second. And he just had a conversation with them. Because he could have taken the bait. I mean, they weren't intentionally baiting him, but it's an example of reacting in a situation. And the irony is when we react, so if the kids are acting up, and this is, I work a lot with parents on this exact issue. And if our response to them acting up is to yell at them, well, how are we acting? Because our children don't do what we tell them to do. Our children do what they see us do. So when you're practicing some of these techniques, whether it's slowing down, being mindful, setting boundaries, and your children see this, I mean, you're setting the example, and then that's what they will do. Another helpful tool whenever you're being baited, visualize. Like, how do you want to respond in this situation? Say this happens again in the future. All right, how do I want to respond here? When they're doing this, how do I, next time I'm interacting with this person, what am I going to do? What's my part in this? Another helpful one that I learned very early is humor. Like learn to understand, like, man, this is them. It has nothing to do with me. And in my mind, it helps me to kind of take a step back and detach a little bit. Like, all right, this is everything to do with them, not me. I don't necessarily laugh out loud in their face because that's not going to be very helpful. But just having a sense of humor about it just kind of takes, because it's not that serious. Like whenever someone's acting like that, you can diffuse a situation very fast by saying, okay, like just accept the situation for what it is. Another thing you can do is limit your exposure to negativity in general, even outside of the situation. Because like if you're watching news all the time, or you're reading clickbait articles, just things that are trying to be incendiary to inflame you, that's baiting also. And I'm not even talking about the online stuff or the stuff you're watching the news. They watch after the break about how you're going to die if you don't do these three things. Like that's a different kind of baiting. I'm just talking about in the dynamics of interpersonal relationships. But if you continue to feed yourself or surround yourself with negative people or negative sources, you're going to be provoked a lot easier. Because anytime you're doing that, you're being manipulated. Anytime that somebody provokes you and you're giving your power away. If you say, well, I reacted like this because of them, then you're saying they have control over me. So you're saying you're not responsible for who you are. It's up to the world, which isn't true. Because you can decide, this is how I want to show up in the situation. Because if you're just reacting through life, and I've talked about this before, your reactions determine your legacy. How you act determines how you are remembered. And if you're being provoked by other people, your entire legacy is not even in your hands. Everything about the legacy, the life that you leave behind, the way you raise your children, the way you impact your community is based on your reaction to other people or outside situations. It doesn't have to be that way. You can be in charge of how you respond by doing these things, slowing down, deciding, how do I want to handle this? Practicing gratitude, visualizing, learning emotional regulation techniques. And that's what next week I'm doing a class for men and women on emotional mastery. What are the emotions I'm feeling? How do I stop letting people manipulate and control me by understanding how I feel, why I feel this, and what's an appropriate expression of how I can display this emotion and work through it. We don't do that. Because emotional intelligence is 400% more responsible for your success in life than how smart you are. EQ to IQ is a 4-to-1 ratio in regards to how important it is in your life. How are you showing up? How are you responding when people are saying things to you? If you want to work on your emotional intelligence, how many of you have taken the bait? Put that's me in the chat. Say, that's me. If you've experienced this where someone's provoked a reaction out of you and you react and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't about me. And do you want to continue to operate like that? Because you don't have to. And as you're going through this process of understanding when people might be baiting you, celebrate the small wins. Like you may not realize it right away. You may still take the bait initially, but at some point, if you're practicing mindfulness and being present, you're going to recognize it. And that's the win. So don't be mad at yourself for taking it. Did you now recognize it? But it might have taken you 4 days before. And maybe now it's like, ooh, wait a minute. Okay. It was this morning and I recognize it now. All right. It's all about them. It's not about me. That's the win. And by doing this, by not taking the bait, it's going to help you so much. You're going to reduce conflict overall in your life because you can diffuse a situation so much easier. by just not engaging, walking away, or just saying, what is this really about? Are you okay today? What's going on? It'll allow you to have healthier relationships, because if you're dealing with somebody who maybe had a chaotic past, but they're trying to develop a healthy relationship, because if you take the bait, you're escalating the situation for both of you involved. And then if there's kids around or family or friends, it makes the situation uncomfortable for everybody. But by addressing it and not taking the bait and looking at finding the commonality of what your joint values are, you can have a healthy relationship. Again, you're modeling the behavior for your children. You're cultivating trust with the person that you're with, and you're focusing on solutions. It increases your emotional intelligence, and it creates a safer space, because then you recognize that sometimes I've baited people before, and it's subconscious. You don't realize you're doing it. It can be a projection of the ego, where I'm either embarrassed or ashamed I did something, so I'll either say something just to get it away from. And we all have the propensity to be able to do that. And once you've started to build a healthier dynamic, you can recognize when you're the one doing the baiting. And especially if you've developed a mutual respect with somebody, then you don't have to do that. Like, I have a new friend in my life, and it's been really fantastic, because just talking with her from a place of trust and respect, it's been very peaceful and enlightening, because not every situation has to be a challenge. And it's nice and refreshing to have a situation or a dynamic like that. When you don't take the bait, you can build a lasting connection. You can build a stronger foundation for the future in communication with not even just that person, but with yourself. Because when you take the bait, you're defensive and you're wanting to get them to understand, because you want to be right. You go to a catabolic place of me versus you. You don't have to go there. You can understand that you can have a disagreement. I had a client back when I was a personal trainer who was of the opposing political beliefs than I was. But I still talk with them, and it's great, because we were always able to have a sense of respect and humor whenever we were talking. We never belittled the other person's ideas. We always, just from a just wanting to understand place, that's how we approach the situation. And I can't think of a single, and this is probably the only dynamic I've ever had with somebody of the opposing political party, where I don't think we ever got heated. I think it was always just a matter of understanding and openness. And it's such a beautiful place to be whenever you can have that. So let me know what your biggest takeaway was. What's your biggest takeaway from this? And how do you plan on stopping yourself from taking the bait when someone tries to bait you into a situation? And I promise you, if you can master this technique, you will be free, because you're responsible for yourself. You're no longer letting the world dictate how you show up. And if you really want to just dial down on this concept, developing, how do I do this? How do I learn how I feel? How do I even identify the feeling or what it's even about? Because sometimes it's not even about this. It's about a situation that happened in childhood that this is mirroring. How do you get to that? Well, I'm teaching a class next week. It's a 5-day class on emotional mastery for anyone. I was doing this for men, but this class is available for anyone who wants to stop their emotions from overpowering their intellect. It's noon Pacific time, but there's a replay available if you can't watch it live. Just go to bergeronwellbeing.com/EQ. And, I'm so thankful for the people that have taken the class and that are now in my Living with Purpose class. That's true freedom. That's true growth, is recognizing that you don't have to just react to everything in life. You don't have to let everything else, because you have control over you, but you give it away. When you're reacting to everything outside, you're ceding your power to people. And if they're baiting you, you're ceding your power to people who don't even have your best interest in mind. Is that how you want to live? Is that how you're living? You have choice. So let me know, what's your biggest takeaway from this? Thank you so much for joining me today. And hopefully I'll see you next week in the Emotional Mastery class. Again, Bergeron Wellbeing /EQ. Thank you so much.